A lot of people are asking, we do curves and cut curves on a bowl or any object, but can we index it? And yes, we can. You can see here that these are actually equal distance apart, but it's really only two cuts. One cut, took apart, put some veneer, glue it back together, then I moved it another so many degrees or so many holes on an index, so you can do as many as you want. A lot of chucks, and some don't, some do, have holes on the back side of it. I do lathe work, a lot of people do, and when you put your chuck on your item, you have holes. And actually, this Vicmark, I believe, only has 24 holes. Normally speaking, those who do segmenting want 32. So I decided to make a separate wheel so it could fit any chuck you have, and it's actually put together with the revolving tailstock chuck adapter. So the chuck adapter is something that you can get it in a couple of different catalogs if you're a lathe turner. And this goes on the tailstock and screws onto the tailstock. So now you can reverse your chuck and hold it differently and do something else with your headstock on your lathe. I have a couple of these. They're very useful because I do a lot of reversing and changing things around. So the reason why this slot in here is so big, because I chose the 3/4 inch 10 TPI, because you can get a bolt just about anywhere. So that's what I use. This you can move up and down, and it works well. So that's what you see in other videos. But what we want is we want to be able to have a pin go through here and go into one of those chuck holes or the hole that's in the disc. So what we did is we put together a system where actually you have this now can be through this fixed hole. Now when you tie that in together, you can move and adjust this any height you want. The chuck stays put, and when you loosen this or tighten it, doesn't matter. This chuck always stays in the same position. Now, if we want a pin to do our work, we have another item that goes in the back. That's adjustable. And now you can slide a pin through here, and you can match the height of your chuck or the height of the disc that we made. The disc, this is a 32 hole disc, and we thought it'd be really smart to put it together here, but these don't come with tapped holes. So we decided to make our own. This is precise, so when you install this thing, it pretty much gets applied, and now you have something that is predictable. It can go on either side. So we try to make this thing really universal, so you can invent anything you need that you need to cut on a bandsaw. Okay, here's one that's all put together, and now we can see what it really looks like. You have a chuck that's actually you can take off at any time, and when you tighten it up, it's always going to register at the same spot because it's going to be tight against the threads. Just like the lathe that you have, you're going to tighten the chuck on there, and it's going to stop. Well, the same theory goes here. So now you can take this off at any time, and your indexer is staying put, not adjusted, it doesn't move. Now in order to assemble this thing, you have this that slides up and down, and this slides up and down also. So your pin can be aligned with the index. Now how it stays put is that you just undo or tighten the large bolt. Now it seems like a pain in the neck, but it gives you the most versatility of putting any size chuck, any size item, and the availability to move this up and down. You loosen some knobs, you can actually slide this whole thing up and down. Back to your hole. So this whole thing will move up and down so you can actually have this anywhere you need it. So right now it's loose, but once you have it in the hole, your index pin, it's just a pen, a loose pen, comes through, you line it up, now you know you have, and it doesn't matter which hole you start out at, because now that you want to tighten it up, it'll always register where you started. So I'm going to consider that 0. Now I like to mark the holes of where I want the next cut. And if you see the item here, I already did 2 cuts and glued them back together. But I want another cut coming in here. So where is that? Well, I did 1, 2 cuts. I'm going to back it off and put it right in the middle. And hopefully it'll land in the middle if I put this in the chuck back to where I started. Now I happen to know that only because it's the first position, 1P, because I wrote the stuff down. That's why I like raw stuff. I write things down on here. First position, which is the first hole. The radius is 5, so I've already got this set at 5 inches. And the sled, front to back, is 160 millimeters, or 6 3/4 inch. So I've already got that set. So the theory is, if I put this chuck on here, now you can adjust this before or after the chuck is on here, but I'm going to do it with the chuck in because it's heavy. So you can see that it does work. Now this does not move. So I want to move this chuck so many degrees. But how about we put this at the original position, which I marked. And I marked. So I guess I need a wrench. Chuck wrench. Line it up. So this was the original first cut. This was the second cut, which is actually positioned down here. We loosen this up, slide the pin out. Oop. Slide the pin in where the next position is. Now you see how wobbly it is? That's because it's not tight. This actually screws back in and repositioned this for us. Now there's no fancy way to do this, but it's efficient. Now if you had a mechanism and all this other stuff, it would cost an arm and a leg. This doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So now we're hoping to get this thing spun and do another layer. So let's see what happens. This we decided was on the first position. So, you know, and I'm seeing over here, I'm looking on the back side, oh, it's right where it needs to be. Now if I show the camera, I can actually put this on this way. Now can you see where it's going to cut? So you can line it up and now it's going to do another pass at the same location. Now I could slide this in or out and do a completely different design down here or even up here. It all depends on what you're after or what cut you are or what you're doing. It may not be a bowl, it may not be a vessel, it may be just an oddball item that you're putting all these angles on. Radius. So let's cut this thing and see what happens. You don't need to be in a big hurry. Let the saw do its work. Let it cut. It's not a race. So now you can see where the old layers were. And now we're adding a new layer. So it gets segmented almost. So I guess this is a lazy man to segment something. Anyway, that's how the indexer works. Here's the problem that a lot of people may or may not have. Let's say this extends out further. Let's say this is a big heavy item. Then all of a sudden you have something that's out of balance. So what I do is shock. An old sock, you know. The dryer eats one of my socks all the time, so I have these leftover socks that I just put lead ballast in. Lead shot. Go to the hardware store and get it. So it actually works really well to counterbalance something. Here's the thing, when you do a jig work on any machine, sometimes you have to support the table that's sliding. Sometimes you have to support an outfeed or inboard. Sometimes you have to counterbalance something. It's just the way it is. Otherwise, you have to build this huge jig that's really heavy and just to support something that you might or might not have. So don't be afraid to use, even rocks would work. Sand would work. Anyway, there's a tip, and that's for the index. People have asked me what an offset curve is. An offset curve is something that doesn't go from point A to B exactly equal from the bottom of your bowl or the bottom of your item you're cutting. So it starts and enters at this level and it ends at that level. Imagine if this carriage was not parallel with your pivot point. If it was offset, now you would start high and end low. So that's an offset curve. So we're going to show you. An offset curve, basically, you can see how it's low, goes around, and it's high, so they're not equal. It's offset. So this I've already cut twice and put back together. So we're going to cut it a third time to show you. Now the thing is, I want to show you on an index because now you can get these offset correctly. An index that we remove the wheel and it's actually using, see the wheel's not there for your pin. We're using the back side of this chuck with its own holes. In order to do that, we had to sharpen and put a point right on this pin. So now it'll work with your chuck if you have holes in the back of it. So we're lining it up with the original index point, but as a safety feature, it would be good to have, since this has a taper on it, it would be nice to have support from the table. So I'm going to show you that this can be adjusted downwards. So it's resting in the right spot. You can still spin it, but actually part of it, this tip, is still on the table. So what we'll do is we'll put this back in its original position, if I can find it. Loosen up the bolt. And now you see I've loosened this, and now this thing can slide up and down. And this actually holds it. So you can set it there, you can set it there, you can set it up taller. It all depends on where you want to go with it. So let's leave it there. Where was it? There it is. So I have marks on here. So now I want this to touch the table. And now it'll give it extra support while I'm making that cut. So I have to move this so it aligns with the hole. And there's a knob on the back side that tightens the location for your pin. And then tighten the bolt, which tightens everything together, so the chuck stays put. Now, it's laying flat here, it's touching there, so now when we cut it, there's a little extra support. The other way to do it also is hold tightly or put a counterweight on the back side. So we're showing you different ways to do the same thing. What we're after here is we want a different cut. And so actually I set it up for a different cut. This was the same offset curve. I already did it twice. I marked halfway in between both cuts. So I'm going to do another cut that is going to offset it. And actually, you can pick it up, put it on the other side so you can see kind of where it's going to land. Because that will be going through the blade. It's going to land there. Now, is that a choice? Well, I'm just going to show you that it's different cuts and different items. Is it parallel? You can change this. You can put this pin at different locations by moving this head one way or the other. Let's just see what this pattern or design is going to look like based on splitting the two differences. So let the blade do its work. Starts out low, going to end up high. Now make sure that you catch the piece. You don't want it accidentally going into the blade after the fact. So now you have an offset cut. So it's not equal on both sides. Glue that back together, put some veneer in there, and make it another pattern. There you go.